Hey there guys, and welcome back. On this week's show, a shop-made magnetic toolbar. Well, through my model builds, I come up with a crazy amount of scrap. And I'm always trying to find ways to use this scrap, and I'm always trying to think of projects that could utilize some of that so that it doesn't go to waste. And this project kind of came to light, and I thought, yeah, I think this would work. And it all starts off with some scrap maple and walnut. Well, what I have is some maple and walnut scraps, and these are kind of, I don't know, they're kind of orphaned pieces from different builds. And what I've got is 3 maple pieces, and they're 1/8 of an inch thick. And I've got 2 of the walnut pieces. And you know what? I don't know the thickness of those. So let's check and I'll let you know. Here we go. We got 5/16. So we got 2 of the walnut pieces at 5/16. Now, the length really is different on all of them, but I think the minimum width here is 1.5. It's actually 1 9/16. And the minimum length looks like this piece, which is 17 inches. I think when it all boils down to it, we're probably going to end up with a 12-inch long piece. But as I said, these are all scrap. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to laminate these all together, and I want to alternate with the maple on the outside, and then we're going to put a piece of the walnut, and then a piece of the maple, and then another piece of the walnut, and then another piece of the maple. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to clamp these all together, and we're going to put them aside and let them dry. Well, our glue up is dry, and what I've done is I've run one side through the jointer to square it off to the edge and to clean up our glue joint, and then I've run it through the table saw to make the other side parallel to this one. And I've cut it to 1 5/16 of an inch wide. Now, before we move on to the next step, I want to show you what I picked up from Amazon, because this is just spectacular, and this is what makes the whole project. And what this is, other than a cardboard box, is a ton of these magnets. And look at the size of those. Those are rare earth magnets. I'm not going to bother pronouncing the real name of them because I couldn't pronounce it if I tried. But these are rare earth magnets, and these are brutally strong. And I mean, just a second here, we'll get them apart. And there is one right there. And you want to be careful with these, because these being the way that they are, long and thin, they're very fragile. And what I mean by fragile is if you let them snap onto the other ones, you will shatter these things. It's incredible how quickly they shatter. So as an actual, say, magnet to stick to something, just say hold papers, it's not very practical because it is so strong. But for something like this, being a tool magnet bar, it's spectacular. So I did some tests with material, and what I did was I tested one of these magnets through 1/8 of an inch material, being maple. And what happened was when I snapped a plane onto that piece of wood, the plane did stick, but then it kind of sagged a bit and, didn't quite sit there right. So what I did as a secondary test, get another one of these off of here, is, I'm almost afraid to snap them together, but I put 2 of them like this, side by side, and then did the same test. Whereas I tried to put a square, this one in particular, against that toolbar, and it snapped on there really nicely and it held in place. So what the plan is to take our board here, and we're going to take it to the router table, and we are going to run it so that we can embed some of these magnets just like this inside of this, but 1/8 of an inch from the surface. So in order to do that, we're going to have to route out all the way down until 1/8 of an inch. So for that, we're going to use a straight bit, and let's head over to the router table and we will see how we can set that up in order to get that, I don't know what you'd call that, the groove routed in there, shall we? Well, I've laid the magnets end to end here, and it ends up to be about a 12-inch long length of magnetic awesomeness. So what I'm going to do is I need to route a 12-inch long groove, and it is about 11/16 wide. So I've got the fence set, and we're just going to nibble away at this. You don't want to take it in one shot. I've got some stops set up on the fence, and I'm going to start routing this groove so that we can insert these magnets. Well, truth be told, I didn't like the way that bit was chattering, so I stopped it at about 1 inch deep, which actually was about the maximum that bit could handle. And I'm okay with that. What I ended up doing was taking it to the table saw from there and cutting it down on this side in order to get the thickness of material that I need here, which coincidentally ended up to be just under 1/8 of an inch. So the magnetism through it will be even more. Now, the other thing that I have done as well as was the bit actually left a center rib in here, and although it was small, it was going to interfere with the installation of the magnets. So I used a 1/2 inch chisel and just carefully pared that out of there until it was clean. So now the next step for us is to install the magnets in this chamber or channel. And as I said, you'll want to be careful that you're not smashing them together. I'm going to try to put them all in at one time and hope for the best. And I don't know how that's going to go, but we're about to find out. So we're just going to lay them in here as carefully as we can, just like that. And hopefully you can see that they fit in there absolutely perfectly. And if you look at the front, we've got some serious magnetism now on the front end of this toolbar. So now how do we keep these in here? Well, that's what we're going to tackle next. Well, I thought of several different ways that I could install these magnets in this channel here, and it involved epoxy. I thought about silicone. I thought of all kinds of different ways, but I really didn't want to have a thick layer of silicone underneath here, or I didn't like this being so hollow as well. But I wanted this thickness so that handles of tools could still have somewhere to sit instead of being up against a wall. I wanted some distance from the wall. So what I've done is, in a scrap of walnut, you can see it's got some serious imperfections. I've cut basically a wooden plug, and I am going to essentially glue this in, clamp it, and then when it dries, I am going to trim it even all the way along with the back end of our magnet bar. Chances are I'm going to probably lose about 1/16 of an inch of my depth because of that, but I'm okay with that. I still have at least an inch here, and honestly, I'm really liking the way this is looking. So that's how we're going to get the magnets to stay in here. We're going to glue this plug in. I'm going to throw a few more clamps on this, and then we can just let it dry up. Well, at this point now, the bar is dry, the plug that we put in the back, but it does protrude about 3/16 of an inch. So I'm going to take it over to the table saw and set the fence, and we're going to trim this flush with the back of our toolbar. Well, we now want to mark out our mounting holes, and for that we're going to drill a hole 3/8 of an inch in from the end and centered across our bar. It's going to be a 3/16 of an inch hole, and we're going to countersink it for our mounting screws. And then once you've got your mounting holes drilled, we're just going to give the entire block a good sanding. This maple has a really sharp edge to it, and we're going to take that off and soften it so that we don't get any nasty cuts from that. And I think maybe a quick coat of Danish oil on here will really bring out the darks of the walnut and give that contrast that I'm looking for. And once we get that done, there's nothing really to do other than to mount it to the wall. And there you have it. A magnetic toolbar for your shop. Guys, this project is a lot of fun and another great way to use up scraps. This was nothing more than a bunch of thin strips that I had lying around that were offcuts from model builds and that sort of thing. And I just glued them together and made a channel to accept rare earth magnets. Now, I'll be sure to post the link down below for the magnets that I picked up, but you may have another source that you use as well. Guys, it doesn't have to be a laminated piece like this, although I really like the contrast here between the maple and the walnut. You can make it out of a solid piece of wood. If you don't have the means to laminate or you don't want to laminate, then of course you can make it out of a solid piece. You don't have to use these for your shop either. This is nothing more really than a classic magnetic knife holder. So for the kitchen, if you wanted to laminate it with larger strips to make it a little wider or that sort of thing, and I don't know, add more magnets or use different species or that sort of thing, and mount it in your kitchen to hold your butcher knives, your steak knives, that sort of thing, you know what? It's a very, it's an attractive addition to any kitchen, and it just looks so good. I mean, it's awesome. Guys, there's something satisfying about playing with magnets, and there's something even more satisfying about being able to take the hobby of woodworking and the fun of playing with magnets and joining the two together to make something that's useful for either the shop or the kitchen or whatever use you could think of to use this thing for. Guys, I want to thank you for tuning in this week. I hope you've enjoyed the show. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe and click the bell so you don't miss the notifications of future shows. Guys, I hope you're going to try this for yourself. I hope you're going to give it a whirl for a gift idea for one of your loved ones or even for yourself. And I also hope that you're going to join me next week when I bring you yet another woodworking video.